Hey there, everyone. It's child therapist Mister Stu with another episode of Bad Kids Don't Exist. This is the podcast that helps adults better understand kids to create environments where kids and their caregivers thrive. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about how to promote acceptance in children. I'll tell you about what it might mean when kids say things that seem cruel. I'll also tell you why acceptance is so important in today's world. And finally, I'll tell you about 3 things you can do to promote acceptance in your kids. But before we jump into that, if you're looking for more videos about children's mental health and how to best support the little ones in your life, this is the channel for you. Make sure to like and subscribe. There are many things I wish I had done differently in my life. But there is one thing that I can't seem to shake from my list of regrets. For a lot of people, it's something that will seem like total nonsense that I should have let go a long time ago, but I just can't seem to get it off my mind. In college, I was part of a fraternity, and to raise money, we worked at a fair in a burger shack. Now, I can say it was a really great experience. We got to eat free burgers, and the people were friendly, and it wasn't very busy. It was really just a way to hang out with some good friends and eat food that wasn't from the college cafeteria. One day, while I was working my shift, a girl, probably about the age of me and my fraternity brothers, came up to order. From what I remember, she had green hair and lots of piercings on her face and her ears, and she talked in a tone that I don't quite remember, but I know it was one that I hadn't heard before and I haven't heard much since. She also didn't understand how to order, and I think she may have been trying to be a bit flirty with me and my brothers. After she finished her order, my fraternity brother who was working the line started making her food, and I turned to one of the other brothers and I said in what I thought was a whisper, "Man, she is really weird." My fraternity brother began to laugh, and then all of a sudden, over the counter, I hear her say, "I can hear you and everything you're saying." I was mortified. I ran to the back of the burger shack. I had to sit down and breathe, and I just couldn't let my face be seen. That is a day I can't forget. And honestly, I hope I don't forget it. And I hope I don't stop feeling bad, at least a little bad, about that moment. Because I judged someone based solely on what I could see and took no time at all before I said that what I could see was wrong. Kids do this too. Sometimes kids seem cruel. In a future episode of this podcast, I'm going to talk about when kids pick on or even bully each other. But today, I want to focus on when kids just say offhanded remarks like, "You're weird." I've talked before on the podcast about a part in the brain right behind the forehead called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for a lot of things, but one thing it can help with is understanding the nuances of words or the full meanings of words. In children, the prefrontal cortex is not fully functional. As a matter of fact, in most young adults, the prefrontal cortex is not fully functional, and the prefrontal cortex never stops growing. So when kids say things that seem really mean, understand they're doing the best they can with the vocabulary and the understanding of words that they have. But specifically, when kids say you're weird, what they're really saying is two things. Number one is, I don't understand that. And number two is, don't think that I'm like that. Let's start with the first one, that I don't understand that. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, the child is saying, that's not something I see very often. This is new and strange to me. You're weird just happens to be the only way they know how to respond to it. This version of you're weird is problematic, though, because as kids grow, they're going to need to learn how to interact with all different kinds of people respectfully. If all they can think is they are really weird and I have no idea what to do in this situation, they're just not set up for success. I recently had a conversation with a parent who is concerned their child is gay. They weren't concerned because they didn't want their child to be gay. They were concerned because they felt like their child was going to be picked on and marginalized for being gay. And this is one I hear fairly often. But I was able to tell that parent, and what I can tell you now is that it used to be if someone was gay, they'd get picked on, and everybody thought the gay person was the one who was wrong for being gay. In today's world, I can't guarantee that a child won't be picked on for being gay, but what I can say is that the child doing the picking is the one who gets marginalized and said to be wrong. They're the jerk. Do you want your child to be the jerk? We'll come back to that, but for now, let's take a deeper look at the second meaning of you're weird, which is don't think that I'm like that. In this one, the child is trying to make a distinction that whatever they see is not something they approve of. They're saying and believing that whatever they see in that person is a flaw. And that flaw is going to make it so that person does not get all of their needs met. They feel like that person, for that reason, is going to be abandoned. And then they take it on themselves. They take it on to mean, if I'm like that person, I will be abandoned. In this meaning, when kids say you're weird or they're weird, they're not being cruel. They're asking a question. They're asking, if that was me, would you still love me? Do you want your child to believe there is a limit to the love you will give them? Do you want them to believe they could do something or be someone that would cause them to be abandoned? I certainly hope not. So whether you are just wanting your child to be successful and be able to interact with different kinds of people, or maybe you're just wanting to reinforce to them, there is nothing for any reason that would make you love them less or abandon them. Acceptance is important. Understanding this whole you're weird, they're weird thing is important. And there are some fairly simple things you can do to build acceptance in your kids. Let me walk you through 3 of them right now. The first one is to build acceptance through exposure. In therapy, it's known that the best way to overcome fear is by being exposed to it. I have an amazing German Shepherd named Stark, and if you follow Mister Stu TV on Facebook or Instagram, you get to see Stark all the time. Stark works with me every day in my therapy practice. And there have been clients we've worked with, clients who, for different reasons, are very afraid of dogs. Exposure therapy in those situations typically involves the client looking at Stark from down the hall while he's behind a gate. Then they move closer to Stark. Then maybe they throw Stark a treat. Then they pet him across the gate. Then they step into the gate and let him sniff them. And finally, they can interact with him freely. Basically, clients are exposed to increasing levels of their fear. They learn to tolerate that fear, and then they're taken to a new level of their fear. Over time, they learn the thing they were afraid of may not be something to be as afraid of as they once were. The same can be done for acceptance. Acceptance can be built over time through exposure. One way to think about it is it's really hard to hate someone when you take the time to get to know them and their full story. Exposing kids to different kinds of people or people they find weird helps them understand those people better. And as they understand them, they can learn to accept them more fully. If you're wanting kids to accept people they find weird, find some of those weird people, and you and your kids start to be around them more often. As they're around them more, their fears can subside, the weirdness wears off, and their acceptance increases. Build acceptance through exposure and watch your kids become more comfortable in this world. I've seen parents do this with Black people, white people, Asian people, Mexican people, gay people, trans people, people with autism, people with different religious beliefs, and people with medical issues. In all of those instances, the more kids are around those types of people, the more the weirdness just wears off and the acceptance will grow. The next way you can build acceptance in kids is by modeling acceptance. Maybe you've often heard that kids are always watching you and they will model what they see you do. I can't emphasize enough how true that is. Recently, I had a phone call with a parent who was upset because their child was becoming verbally aggressive as he heads into his teenage years. As what I feel calmly explained some of the difficulties this child is facing, the parent started to scream at me and curse at me over the phone. And she told me the child was watching her have this conversation. As calmly as I could, I said, "He's watching you. And if you want him to stop being verbally aggressive, you're going to have to stop first." The same is true with acceptance. For those individuals or groups of people your kids find weird, how do they see you treat them? How do you treat the trans cashier at the coffee shop? How do you treat the person with autism who is the greeter at the grocery store? How do you treat the Black man who is your waiter? The way you treat them matters because your child is watching, and what they see, they will do. Model acceptance, and you'll watch the weirdness wear off, and the acceptance will grow. The final way I'd like to encourage you to use to build acceptance in your kids is by calling out injustice. One of the best books I read last year was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. It's an awesome story about why people are included, why others are excluded, and how things could be if we all just took the time to get to know someone's story. In the book, the main character's name is Kaya Clark. Many of the townspeople who haven't gotten to know her call her the Marsh Girl. Kaya is put on trial by the townspeople, and her lawyer says this: "Did we exclude Miss Clark because she was different? Or was she different because we excluded her? If we had taken her in as one of our own, I think that's what she would be today. If we had fed, clothed, and loved her, invited her into our churches and our homes, we wouldn't be prejudiced against her." This story is not about why Kaya should have been more like the townspeople. It was about why the townspeople were making fun of this girl, calling out this girl, and treating this girl poorly just because she was different. It's not about trying to make her assimilate to their community or to their values or to their culture and adopting what they believe. It was just maybe if we had welcomed her, she wouldn't be an outsider. When you see injustice and you call it out, and your child sees you call it out, you're doing so much more than just standing up for one person. You're also showing your child there are unacceptable ways to treat people. There are unacceptable ways to be treated, and that even if they are weird, like that person who was being treated poorly, you are going to stand up for them. Calling out injustice can happen in so many ways. It can be as simple as talking about injustice when it comes up in a bedtime story. It can be talking with your child about what they can do after they tell you they watched someone at school get picked on. Or it can be that when you see injustice happen out in public, you don't just let it go. If you call out injustice, the weirdness will wear off and the acceptance will grow. It can look like kids who have a hard time accepting others are bad kids. But the responsibility is on us, the adults, to expose kids to different kinds of people, to model acceptance of those people, and to call out injustices so kids can see it. Watching us do it is the only way they can learn how. And if we're honest, we could all do a better job of being more accepting ourselves. Kids struggling to accept others are not bad kids. Remember, some things exist, some things don't. Bad kids don't exist. I love helping adults better understand kids to create environments where kids and their caregivers thrive. If that sounds like a good match for you and the next event that you have coming up, feel free to check out the link in the description to this video, or head over to badkidsdon'texist.com/booking, and there you'll find all the information you need to book me as a keynote speaker or a workshop leader. I can't wait to join with you and make that next event a success.